Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 34 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a church run by Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a lifetime sentence in prison.
I was raised in the mainstream LDS church in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years now and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We are super excited to finally give you all what you've been asking for. We have an interview with the man, the legend, and we want to welcome Brady Williams. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
We were so excited when gratefully you reached out and said that you'd be willing to do this interview with us because we just loved your family and you guys honestly we've watched a lot of documentaries, we've watched a lot of shows around polygamy, and we just really felt like you were the most solid polygamous family that we had seen. And we were just, I don't know, we just thought it was super awesome. And so it was great when we had the opportunity to touch base with you and to be able to talk to you more about life after the show and where your family is now.
Yeah, so the show My 5 Wives, we just kind of want to get into that a little bit. We reviewed the show in its entirety, and obviously we had a lot of insight and opinions based on the way I was raised versus the way the show portrayed your family in the AUB and all of that. So we just wanted to kind of start with that and ask kind of how the show came about to be and how you felt. What were your feelings about how the show portrayed your family?
So the show came about, we had several different networks and producers, production companies approach us for a few years before we ever agreed to the TLC show. And none of them really stuck. All of them were more sensational. And like we had HBO Big Love people ask us to do a after show commentary, and that wasn't really anything we were really interested in. Plus, I mean, because it was just, I don't know, it didn't really say anything about our family. We were just going to comment on how accurate it was.
Okay.
And then it was really illegal. And so we're like putting our lives on the line, not for a cause, just for entertainment and for very shockingly little money. And so, just my time, I wouldn't want to waste my time unless I'm reimbursed for it. So, but then the production company that pitched us for Discovery Networks, which owns TLC, came to us and they said all the right things compared to what other outlets had offered to do a show on us because of the success of Sister Wives, right? Mm-hmm. Right around the same time Sister Wives was being searched out, they were searching us out as well. And we said no on some of those. And then it kept saying no until TLC. And
I see.
They agreed to do we wanted to do a feel-good show that was, celebrating our lifestyle, showing an alternate marriage form, family form. And, we had left the AUB by then, and we thought, okay, well, this might be good. This might be fun. And so we did it.
How did you feel about the production? I know at that point, like polygamy was still illegal, or was it right after they had turned it into a misdemeanor? I mean, there's definitely still was danger in putting your family out there.
So it was illegal when we started it. And I think it was season 2. I can't remember. It's been a while. But they actually made it into a misdemeanor. Then they recriminalized it after our shows were done. And now they've decriminalized it. Right? So it's been this fickle. And I have a whole story. I was up on Capitol Hill during all of that, testifying because I was one of the only polygamists that dared, because I was already out. So why not? Anyway, so that's a long story. But yeah, how I was advocating for the right to live polygamy up at Capitol Hill. And while at the same time saying it's not a very good way to live.
Right.
Society in general is what I think. But I do think, I've been pretty vocal that I think, listen, as long as it's not manipulative or coercion, anybody should be able to love however they want to love and enter into those kind of arrangements if they want to.
Right.
Yeah. And I know you do a lot of advocacy and a lot of work talking about that, which we'll get into in a little bit, because I want you to kind of be able to go a little bit more in depth about about that topic and how you feel. The last thing about the show, a lot of people have questions, why did it stop after 2 seasons? Us personally watching it from a complete outsider's view, we're like, because they're just like a nice, happy
There's
family
not enough
and
drama.
there's not enough drama. Like we were like, is that why it stopped? Can you give any insight to that? Like, why did it stop? Was it on good terms, bad terms? How do you feel like the show did overall?
Yeah, I think there's not one simple answer.
Okay.
We certainly had enough viewership that greenlight a 3rd season, and we went deep into the discussions. By that point, my wives were just like, "Oh my God, this is so intrusive, and it takes up so much time," and that they were not wanting to, right? And it would have taken a lot of convincing for them, probably a lot more money for them or me to do it. The intrusion on being a semi-celebrity, when you lose your anonymity, while it's flattering in some ways, it's very hard in others. That I can't go out to dinner without being, approached 3 or 4 times during dinner. That's flattering. Wow. It strokes your ego, but it's also, really? Okay, yeah, I'll stop and talk to you and take a picture with you and stuff like that.
Well, and it's your life, and it's your family, and I don't know for sure, but I imagine that some of these people disagreed with the way you were living, and so maybe not every interaction was pleasant.
Most, if they're brave enough, it's because they have something nice to say.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Good.
Most of the time, very seldom. I mean, it is interesting how, like, I would have some of my, cousins or something say, "I watched the show. I know Brady," and I'm like, what do you think you know? Like, they know I preferred one wife over the other. I'm like, and you know this how? From the show. I could just tell,
Yep.
Or one of my wife's sisters say, "Hey, I watched the show and it's obvious that Brady's favoring Rosemary," or something. I'm like, you watched the show, I mean,
yeah. I feel like you're singling me out here because I may or may not have said that. And as I watched the show, but you're very right, and I think I mentioned this too. As I said, as the show portrays it, I believe that this, that, and the other. But I tried to be clear that it's because of the way the show portrays. But you know how they can edit things and make it seem one way, and maybe it's not that way. So, but I totally was under the impression that that you favored your first wife over the others because of the way the show, in some ways, made it seem. So, did the show play some trickery on my brain?
Of course,
Okay.
and that's low hanging fruit. So one of the big reasons that the networks were pushing back is we just didn't give enough drama. And in fact, so a little behind the scenes story, I had, so the showrunner, the people on site filming would just they're digging, looking, "Hey, we know you're talking after the cameras are gone at night and working out your issues because nobody has it this good, especially in that." And and they're like, we need you to bring those out into the open. I was just like, "Listen, dude, you get what you get, and sure, we're willing to talk about tender issues, but so it kept on going back and forth until finally one of the higher execs at TLC, one of the vice presidents way up there, gives me a call and he says, "Brady, you guys could be huge if you'll just give us some drama." And he says, "Couldn't you just have one of your wives throw a coffee mug across the room at you?"
No.
I'm like, what? Yeah, I mean, that'd be so good for ratings. Like, I'm not saying just fabricate it, but just let loose and let it rip. And I'm like, that's not us. We're not going to fabricate anything. We're not going to sensationalize anything. So were we the best for reality television? We certainly could have been better for reality television by offering up more and more drama. And my wives are not just outwardly dramatic people, very much. We saw Noni in that infamous scene being caught on these remote cameras they put in our room yelling at me. And that was probably one of the highest watched episodes, right?
Right.
And she was mortified by that. Like, oh,
Mm.
she was so upset.
But
But
we all lose our tempers with our husbands
of
sometimes.
course,
Like, every person does that. So
yeah.
I felt, yeah,
But the fact that they
that they can
capitalized on that
sensationalize
because
it.
that's what they knew would get the views and all that. And I think that a lot of times people, and I did this myself, I compared what the show showed your family, the way you were living, to my upbringing with four moms. But also, a lot of people, including myself, compare your family to the sister wives,
Of
and
course.
just because similar, both came from AUB background, But I have to admit, it seemed like, and we mentioned this multiple times, that not only you and your relationship with your wives, but also your five wives together seemed like they could just get together and have a good old time, and like there wasn't really any problem or jealousy or that kind of thing, which I'll let you answer to that in a minute. But in Sister Wives, there were a few scenes where they tried to get together to be friends, and it was like,
It felt like production was forcing them to be friends versus your wives, where it seemed like every time we were watching
yeah,
production, it was like they were already friends and the cameras were just catching it.
right,
And
right,
and I think that that's largely true. They really would go do things together and invent reasons to be together, and just I don't know. Rosemary would go into Rhonda's room until late at night because they're both night owls, and I'm a real early bird. And I'd wake
mm,
up and to laughing, and here's Rhonda and Rose laughing in the bedroom, and I'm like, what's going on? And so did that take place? Sure. I mean, qualify that with, of course, there's different personalities are naturally friends where others aren't, right?
right,
Yeah.
And of course there is drama and tension between the wives, just like there is between a husband and a wife. But amplify that also into a polygamous situation, which is a lot more complex. It's more than 5 times as complex. It's all these different relationships going in between each other. It's like 25 times as complex. So
Yeah.
yeah. Something I wanted to ask you, because people come to me. I never actually had any wives, let alone multiple wives in the FLDS church. So I never experienced living polygamy myself. I just experienced growing up in polygamy. But people will come to me all the time and jokingly say, "I can't believe you left that, man. You could have had all these women, and you just left that and missed out on your opportunity. Now you just have a boring monogamous relationship." And I always laugh at that, of course, because I wouldn't want it any other way for myself. But at the same time, I tell people there's a lot more to just there's a lot more to polygamy than just having multiple women. It's very, very difficult at times. You have a lot more
Responsibility.
responsibility, a lot more to be concerned about. There's just a lot going on. So can you speak to that? Because you have experienced it. If someone were to say, "Oh, you lucky dog," is it just as simple as having multiple women, or is it actually challenging at times?
yeah, of course, it's very challenging. Um, from the man's point of view, which is the only point of view I have, right? There's it's so complex because I'm not just trying to manage mine and Noni's relationship. And to a fault, I get involved in Noni's and Rhonda's relationship too. Like, so I'm an intermediary there, where I'm monogamous. You only have you and Melissa's relationship, Sam, that you're trying to
Right.
negotiate. You're not trying to
Yeah.
negotiate an intimate relationship between that. You have an intimate relationship with another woman, and you're asking Melissa to participate on her level as a sister wife, with that. And so it's so much more complex than just a you to you. It's you to you
Hmm.
to her, and back, and then keep multiplying that out into more and more wives. It gets more and more complex. So
Right.
it's like exponentially, not just multiply harder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same with kids, and then you have, well, this wife's kids versus those wife's kids, and there's a dynamic, and they have the flair that their mother gave them versus the flair this mother gave them, and then so they experience their father through two different lenses, but it's the same dad. So
Right.
how do you manage that? And then obviously taking care of two kids versus 4 kids. Like if you within a monogamous situation, well, now try 25 and try to not just resources, but how about emotions and all of those different things you navigate with your children, and you still only have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
Cannot even imagine.
One of the things that I found most intriguing within the show, and I'm sure still post show, I can't wait to hear more about as well, but the fact that you guys had left the AUB religion because, going into your plural marriage was a religious choice, and same with Sam's family. A lot of the reason for, I'd say most of Western American polygamy revolves around religious reasons and has religious ties to it. So leaving that religious group and you being lucky enough that like all of your wives, I mean, I know monogamous couples that faith transitions can tear apart just one relationship, let alone with 5 wives. What was that like for you guys? And where did that dynamic of, I can't help but my Mormonism brain wants to say like recovenanting to each other outside of a religious aspect. What did that look like for your family?
So transitioning out of the religion, but keeping the family, right, is what we were able to do that very, very few. In fact, I don't know that I can. Maybe I can name one other family, that polygamous family I know. I'm sure there's others, but it's just extremely difficult to do because, like you said, the reason you got together was the promise of heaven or the fear of hell, right? And hopefully there was a little bit of love in there. But the 2 primary reasons are the religion told you to do it, right? And there's societal pressure built in. Like mom and dad did it, all my friends do it, everybody's doing it, right? So that's built in, that compulsion to do it, along with the doctrine that's teaching you the only way to be a God in heaven is if you have 3 wives, and then all these different quorums that Brigham Young talked about, and 3 wives, 5 wives, 12 wives, on and on and on it goes. But when we left that, and it started with me, and I watched your Jimmy Rex interview that you broke down, and that tells my journey out of my thought patterns of fundamentalism. So I've left fundamentalism. I don't think I'm a fundamentalist anymore. At least I try not to be. Sometimes my fundamentalist thought patterns are still in there because while I was raised mainstream Mormonism, my dad was as fundamentalist as it gets. And Mormonism, as far as a mainstream religion goes, is also pretty fundamentalist. There's a lot of tendencies in that religion as well. But when we left, and that took some time for all my wives to come to, for about 3 years, I was on the way out, and I didn't even hint to my wives because they were so, they were born and raised polygamist and fundamentalist, and I knew they would have left me because the call to obey and stay loyal is so strong. Like if your husband leaves, you leave him, right? If he takes off his garments, you're done. And so I was terrified of that. But slowly, they would see what I was reading or ask me questions, and I would answer them. And eventually, within 2 or 3 years after I had fully left, my last wife, who was still wondering, Rhonda was the last one to finally just say, okay, this is my choice to leave as well. That took about 5 years total. And then we all left, and we had very, very frank discussions. I've had very, very frank discussions, and I continue to reestablish this, that those covenants that we made to each other were made on bad faith, as in that the promises we made to stay true to each other were based upon compulsion, this fear of hell and promise of heaven, and they can't stand. Because now we've changed the whole parameter around that marriage. It'd be unfair of me to insist that they stay because you promised me you would. Well, everything's changed. So now why stay? Well, hopefully Brady's a good husband. That's why you'd stay with him. Hopefully you really love him. That's why you'd stay with him. Hopefully the investment of all these years and children and common a common belief system that we have now is a reason to stay with Brady and the other.
Mhm.
Hopefully, they're a good enough wife, and all those same qualifiers are true for me to want to stay with them in this co-committed relationship rather than this codependent compulsion that religion insists on. I don't know if that answers it, but
Yeah,
No, that
definitely.
definitely answers it. Thank you. I know
Definitely.
it's, like I said, that's a very big question to even ask, but
Right.
yeah, we could spend a whole podcast just on that question.
yeah.
Yeah, that's tricky too because like you mentioned in the beginning, the marriage and all that, the polygamy and all of that was based around one specific religion, the AUB or Mormonism,
Yeah,
fundamentalism, and then you move away from that, and you just explained the covenant side and all of that, and it's about love. Was there ever a point in that transition that you thought, and if this is too personal, you can just say, I'm not answering that. But was there ever a point that you thought that one of your wives would leave you or that they threatened to leave you because of the faith transition?
that I thought or I feared. So there was a lot of fear that that they would leave me. That I thought. Well, I still fear it, and I still wonder, like, am I good enough? I keep asking myself, am I performing the way I need to be? Am I the best choice for her? And if I ever stop thinking that, I think there might be a problem because, I want to keep checking myself and make sure I am her very best option. And if I'm not, I better do what it takes to be her best option in life. Because to think someone is stuck with me, I don't want that kind of relationship. I want someone who's there because they're fully invested. But have I
Right.
had those fears? Yeah, all the time. I'm
Yeah.
I'm always afraid that I'm not the best choice for her.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's crazy. I feel like unless you've been through a faith transition with a spouse, whether it's monogamous or plural, like it's hard to describe that fear. Like I grew up, my dad came out leaving the church and he came out as an atheist and he hadn't discussed with my mom at all any of his doubts.
Mm,
And so it was like a bomb going off in my family. And it was this huge thing. And my mom was devastated. And all of us kids thought for sure they were going to get divorced, or maybe it would be better if they were divorced rather than the hell that they were going through. And I remember then when I started having questions in my marriage, like, or about the church, not about the marriage, but like about the church. And that fear of seeing what happened to my parents was like crippling, just like, oh my gosh, I can't do to him what I watched my dad do to my mom. And it's not even that it was intentional. My dad wasn't trying to harm our family or harm my mom in any way. It was just to a point where he finally had to come out with his truth, right? Of,
yeah.
no, I just really can't believe this anymore. So it's so complex. And then that fear of like, oh, is that what's going to happen to me and Sam by me having these questions and, and going about that fear is, like I said, hard to explain to someone unless they've been through it. And then to be able to come out the other side with your spouse or with your spouses is just, oh my gosh, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's so amazing and wonderful. And we've had a lot of people reach out to us recently talking about how they were able to go through it as a couple. And now I'm finally starting to see more couples staying together through faith transitions
Right.
rather than separating. And it makes my heart so happy to see more and more
Doing
people
it
be able to be on that side of it,
doing it together.
doing it
Yeah.
together.
I
So,
think it's because you can have so much more authenticity there when you're doing something because the society tells you to do, or because of some authority tells you to do it. That's not very authentic. If you're doing something because you're truly have vetted this way of life, and when you cast this gaze upon your life and it comes up wanting, like it did for me in fundamentalism and Mormonism, and even my very foundational beliefs in even God. What is God?
mhm.
That's scary. But when you come out the other side, there it's so refreshing, and you're living a life of authenticity that you didn't before.
Mhm.
You think you are when you're in it. You
Right.
think you are, but you're
Right.
not really. Until
Yeah.
you've peeled it all back. And the scary part though is, in a very real way, your former identity dies and your
Yeah.
spouse sees it dying. And that's scary because they don't know what's going to happen on the other side. So they're
Right.
scared. And if you don't really work on that relationship, I think that's why relationships that go through these faith crises die, is because they're not invested in each other enough and have good enough communication skills. There's a whole lot of nuance in there that that death of the former self is too much to overcome for a relationship.
Yeah. On that note, what do you feel like was the biggest cultural thing within yourself that your wives saw die? Like, just as an example between us, like Sam loves coffee. And I grew up like so much that coffee was so bad that
Yeah.
that I can't even stand the smell of it. And I feel like some of that was indoctrination. So getting used to like allowing him to have coffee in the house and the smell, that was something like him changing, that I had to accept that now I was with a coffee lover. That not only like, not because I thought it was bad morally anymore, but I just didn't like coffee. And that like took me some time to get over and be okay
Yeah.
with like, okay, that's part of his new identity. I know that's a silly one, but like so many of the cultural things could be silly things to the outside world. What was something in your family that was like your wives wanted to do that you were like, oh, culturally, that's harder? Or that was something you wanted to do that culturally your wives were like, oh.
So I've never had much issues with my wives changing, probably because I'm such the big changer. Like, well, like tattoos. So now I have, I got this tattoo on the show, and I've since got this tattoo. So a couple of my wives are like, "Oh yeah, I like it. It's hot." And some of them are like, "No, you don't defile your temple." And I'm just like,
Yeah.
we talk about this, right? And they're like, "Fine, I just don't agree with it." And so that's been hard for a couple of them. The coffee thing. So I love coffee. And I mean, I was the good Mormon kid that never even tasted Coca-Cola, until I was 19. I never tasted cola till I was 19. And then I started drinking coffee, and then so I would say the word of wisdom thing changed a little bit, but that one's pretty easy to just reason through your head. Some of the word of wisdom stuff. The tattoo thing, all of it is reasonable to, or I wouldn't have done it because I'm pretty true to my own personal code of ethics. But I would say tattoos, a little bit of the word of wisdom thing, but a more subtle is that the lack of an appeal to authority, that you can blame someone else. That was really hard for my wives to get around. Like, well, where do you find your source of truth? And I'm just like, you've got to find that between you and your relationship with God, not you and the prophet or the scripture or because all those scriptures is just men speaking to God for you. And that's if you truly believe in the validity of the scriptures as well. And there's some suspicion on some of that stuff, but so that was really hard. That's a big change too, is the source of authority lie within you or within someone else?
Yeah, that's a huge one. I feel like
we've been there too a lot. It's like, okay, you're told exactly how to live your life, right? You have all the answers, or at least you believe you have all of the answers. And then all of a sudden you're questioning everything. And you don't know where to go to find the truth, and so you have to kind of re-identify what is truth and where to go to find the truth and all of that. So
I feel like getting comfortable with the words "I don't know" was
yes.
something that was hard for me, because I'm a checklist girly, and I loved the fact that, growing up in the church, it was just like, if I did this, 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 and this equals good.
Yep.
And this equals bad. And I loved that. And I clung to that. So all of a sudden being able to be like, that's just a choice. Coffee, a beverage, any type of beverage is a choice and doesn't hold morality. That was like just, and then being able to say, I don't know something, where from the time you're
Feels so
3
good.
or 4 and you're giving your testimony over the pulpit and they're whispering, I know the church is true. I know this. I know that. I know this, And so going from that and feeling like I knew so much about exactly who God was, or exactly how heaven was, or exactly how this works or that works, to being willing to say, I don't think I know anything. Here's what I think. Here's what I believe. Here's what I don't know. But being comfortable with not knowing things, I feel
but
like was a huge
but
one.
it's also beautiful once you fully accept that there are things you just cannot fully understand. It's beautiful to be able to say I don't know, and it's beautiful to be able to work with your spouse and find your truth, without someone else whispering in your ear, this is what it is, right?
Right.
So it's been a beautiful journey for us.
And it's a little scary because now you can't look toward the church, let's say, or the group or whatever authority to provide that list of things to do right or wrong. Now, so if that's not there anymore, now whose job is it? Now it's
Right.
your job. And a lot of people just aren't up to it. And they just go aimlessly until, well, I'll just settle in. I left the AUB, but now I'll just go to the church. And the church
Mm.
provides them a new list. Or I don't like that one. Now I'm going to go to this, and it provides them a new list.
Yep.
Right. When you get real personal growth is when you take the onus of your own code of ethics, your own checklist, and make it yourself. And then keep challenging that for the rest of your life, because do you believe in eternal progression or not? If you do, that means you're always going to keep finding something wrong.
Right.
Yes. I want to hear your opinion on this as well. Just as soon as you said that, the scariness of it being responsible reminded me of when we were first coming out of the mainstream church and being like, but I don't know how to be a parent. We had a 3-year-old and a brand newborn. And I said to myself, I was like, I don't know how to raise children without primary, without young women's, without young men, without all these programs. How am I going to do that? And I was so scared. And I want to say, it was really heavy on my heart for a couple months.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it went from fear to anger, because all of a sudden I went, okay, if I am divinely meant to be a mother, how dare somebody else tell me, or any organization tell me, that I'm not capable of that without them?
Yeah.
If that's divine, God-given right of mine to be a mother, I am prepared for this and I can do it. And I don't need to rely upon these organizations because they told me I do.
Right.
And so then I went into angry mode, and then I got through that. But how did you feel and your wives feel raising children, now having to navigate where, like you said, there is no one else to blame? Like, you're coming up with these rules and we're all parents trying to do the best we can. How did that feel, navigating that as parents in this new dynamic?
Again, for me, it wasn't so hard because I was born and raised to challenge authority from a child, right? So the nurture button in me was always, well, I'm going to it's my job to raise my children. And I would do family Sunday school and stuff like that, even though there was church Sunday school to go to. Well, that's secondary to my own Sunday school. But the wives, I think it was a lot harder for them to just say, and in fact, there were many discussions, and there continue to be, how, are the kids going to be as good? Are they going to get the same kind of friends and influence that I had growing up for high morality? Because I still want my children to be high moral individuals, and know how to be honest and charitable and all these different things. And if they don't have Sunday school, how are they going to learn? And I said, well, that's on us. It's always been on us. In fact, that's all any church should ever be, is a support to the home. And, or if you're not a family, if you're a single person, it should be a support to your own personal code of ethics, right? It's still, the onus is on you. And the church says, oh, no, it can be on us. Just, if you do what I say, and it gets to extremes of, well, all you have to do is I say, and then I'll introduce you to the Savior in the next life, right? So you get to pawn off all that responsibility on whoever is the author of your list. Well, now if you create your own list, it's radical accountability, where you have to account for everything, because you're even setting the list that you're going to measure yourself against. And so that was pretty scary for the wives, in a very real way. And I said, yeah, well, we need to. So we have very active Sunday schools. And now that my kids are all growing up and out, because my family's way different than in the show, obviously, the dynamics and how many kids are even moved out and having grandkids. But Now we do a lot through like group me, and and
Mm.
I'll still try to teach through, and it's called the Book of Brady. It's just Brady's own book of little helpful hints and inspirations that I come up with every morning in my study session, and then I'll just share it with all my adult kids and all my in-laws and stuff like that, and grandkids.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. Speaking of all of your kids, because 25, I mean, that's, we have two. And sometimes I'm thinking, wow, this is a lot of work. 25 kids, you have 5 wives, and you're trying to navigate keeping all of them safe and happy and teaching them. Do you feel like you are able to have the relationship that you want with that many kids, or is it difficult to have enough time in a day to? Have you figured it out? Have you cracked the code to have a relationship with that many kids?
I don't know. It's my greatest fear is that, and the thing I'm most insecure about is whether or not I'm doing a good enough job as a father, now a grandfather, and certainly as a husband. And I try harder at that than anything in life is to be a quality, because I know the quantity isn't what I want it to be. So the quality is what I strive for, and I know I fail in many cases and wish I didn't, but it's not for a lack of effort or intent to be that, and I sacrifice a lot. I've spoke about this before. It's just, I give up my hobbies or I adapt my hobbies so that family members can do it. Like I hike every Saturday or Sunday, and it's always just a big open invitation. Hey, I'm leaving the big house at 6 a.m. Anybody want to come? We're going to go hike Temp, or, that type of a thing. And so I try to include everybody in that. Every excuse we can have for a family barbecue. And, every night I walk in the door and I put my phone down and we're having family dinner. We still do family dinners.
Nice.
And we all gather around, and there's just a lot less people there now. But I actively search for a conversation with someone, and I just open it up and I just go visit, and I'll get in there and do dishes with people and, sit and talk that way. So I try to leverage my time to be the best dad I can be. Take trips to Washington or to Europe or whatever like that with different family members to just really get that close time. And then there's the general time. So I'm ever conscious of the amount of time to be the best father and husband. But the simple answer is I don't think I'm doing a good enough job. And I don't think I ever will do a good enough job, but I'm going to keep trying.
Hey, to me, I was going to say, that means you're a good parent.
The fact that you are always stressing about it. We know plenty of people out there that have one kid and the father's not in that kid's life. Right. So, we have to tip your hat. We have to tip our hat to you in the fact that you're trying to keep a good relationship with that many people. What if one of your children came to you and said, Dad, I just think we probably should have stayed in the AUB. I'm considering going back to the AUB and believing in that religion.
Well, I would say, okay, are you open to hearing the whole truth? And I would just tell them the truth as far as I know it about being in the AUB. And, I know a lot about being a fundamentalist. I very, very well read and been through all of the stuff and all of their teachings and held really high positions of with a lot of responsibility. And I would say, good luck to you. I'm always here. I'll keep talking to you. I have several children in the church, and I've had the same discussion with them. Like, just remember, the prophet puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like anybody else, right? And so, your first duty is to your relationship with the divine. Make sure that's good. And, and just like that, just like my atheist son. And I just say, I don't care if you believe in a pink elephant wearing a blue tutu. Are you a good person who's trying to, have all of these different things? And this is what I think is good in life. So I would definitely warn them away from fundamentalism, because I think fundamentalism has some inherent bad things about it.
Right.
Religion in general, or especially I think monotheistic religion, there's some real issues that are hard to defeat, these issues. And I talked openly about that, and we love philosophical discussions. And, I have a degree in philosophy, so, I'm able to really go deep with it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, but I would warn them away from fundamentalism, and not just
That makes sense.
any fundamentalism.
If you were to tell our viewers, like, what would be like the top 3 dangers of fundamentalism for people that are watching and maybe either aren't familiar with fundamentalism, or maybe they're watching and they're in fundamentalism right now? What are the top couple dangers that you see with fundamentalism?
Exclusion. Like it really feels like they proclaim to be the gospel of inclusion, but they're not. It's excluding everybody that doesn't believe the way they do. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous, and it breaks up families, and it isolates you from a broader worldview of love. My greatest spiritual example is Jesus for me, although Buddha's a close second, along with a million other saints and sages. But it was always the gospel of inclusion, and fundamentalism speaks words to it, but they don't live that, right? If anybody differs from them, they're to be excluded out. So that's scary. This fascination with a single point of authority is very dangerous, because that allows that single point of authority. So a prophet, a cult leader, whatever you want to, that person has so much power over you that it can twist and cause a lot of harm. And I don't know what I'd say the third. I'd have to sit and think about a third top reason. But those 2 things are really, really dangerous, in that they get you to isolate yourself from the rest of the world and to judge in ways that are just so bad. And it turns into radicalized belief. And we see those divides in America right now, just the extreme right or the extreme left. And it just causes contempt, and you don't listen to other people's stories because you think your story is the only right one. And all of that is fundamentalist thought.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can speak to that coming from the FLDS church 100%. And I agree with those 2 points. And I would say, just like you said, along with those 2 points is the judging of others, and the constant guilt that you're not good enough because you're told that you are this very special group of people and you're better than everyone else because you're the only ones that have the truth. So 100% I can speak to that. Coming from the FLDS church, it felt like we were very secluded from the rest of the world. And of course, we were being told that it was a good thing, right?
Right. And then you tell me, so you have this belief, right? You're being told over and over and over again. And the mainstream LDS too, Melissa, you know this. You were told that you were chosen for these latter days, and you're this special person. But I'm going to credit Robin with this, having me think about this years ago, is you're told how special you are, but inside you're a sinner. You've done this bad and that bad. And as a young man, you're told that if you ever had this bad thought about thinking about a woman's body part, you're going to go to hell. And yet, you can't stop thinking about it as a young man. And so you're this chosen generation, but you're going to hell. And so there's this tension inside of you that is unnavigable.
Yeah.
And so you're going to go on your deathbed and die knowing that I didn't live up. And it's so,
and it feels impossible. It feels impossible to get to where you're actually supposed to be. And then I think, at least within Mormonism, the idea that the only way that I can continue to somehow be worthy is to work harder or do more.
Right.
So then you're working yourself into the ground, right? Okay, I just have to do more. And if I go and I do my callings better, if I do this, because there is that checklist mentality, there is always something else that could be done. And so it's very easy to self-loathe if you're not doing all of the things all of the time. and you end up just running yourself into the ground trying to be perfect, to live up to being this perfect dispensation, to be these perfect people that when we walk into heaven, the heavens are going to be silenced and people are going to be in awe that we made it through these last days. Like all these stories of how people were supposed to be in awe of you. And you're like, okay, what can I do to make that happen? Like that's a big expectation as a teenager.
And it's so frustrating because you're comparing yourselves to the other people in the group, right?
Right.
And these other people in the group aren't going up to you and telling you about the bad things they've done in their life. And so, to the best of your knowledge, you're thinking, how is everyone around me so perfect and I'm so bad? It's so frustrating, and you're constantly judging yourself and comparing yourself to everyone else. And and honestly, that is one of the big reasons that Melissa and I chose to step away from it all, just because when we had our own kids, we thought, we don't want that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that was the big kicker why I left. The final instance of I've got to figure this out is Carly, my oldest daughter, was 12. And she was starting to get interest, and she was talking about boys. I'm like, it's only a couple years away, and she's going to be dating and courting, and then she's going to have some of these dirty old men asking her to be, 56-year-old men asking to be in her and their family. And I can't handle the thought of her going in because, my God, I mean, a lot of people, even to this day, a lot of polygamists and even just church members come to me and tell me about their heartbreaks in life and in religion and want advice from me. And, this was going on constantly because I was a bishop and, so I'd hear all these things and I just said, I can't do it. Like, 95% of everybody who's living it, I think are living it for the wrong reasons. And I couldn't handle having my daughters enter into this. And so I had to get real clarity. And that's when I knew I had to leave. Fundamentalism. And how was I going to do that and keep my family? Because it doesn't do any good to leave and then lose my family too. And so that journey was very scary for me and for everybody. And there was a lot of repercussions, and the wives were ostracized. Anyway, clearly I was, but to have them have their families, shun them and other them, meaning treat them differently than before, and like they were of less value, and they couldn't talk to them because they didn't have anything in common anymore. And he's like, "What? So today you don't have anything in common with me, but yesterday you did? Like,
Right.
we still had all of our childhood together. I'm still a mom with kids just like you. I'm still have 99% of what I believe you believe. I just don't believe this point, And so, all of that's scary.
To be continued. Stay tuned next week for what life is like now for the Williams family.